Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're jumping into a topic that millions of people navigate for decades, yet it can still feel so complex: contraception. Our goal here is to slice through some of that confusion with clear facts and some really powerful insights from our research. Let's dive in.
I want to start with just a number, 36. What could that possibly be? It seems kind of random, but it's actually incredibly personal for a huge part of the population.
Yep, 36 years. That is roughly how long most women are in their reproductive years. For more than 3 decades, figuring out how to manage fertility is a constant part of life. That is a massive chunk of a person's life to navigate. Which brings us to our next kind of staggering number. Almost half. Think about that. With all those years of potential fertility, nearly half of all pregnancies are unintended. That one statistic right there shows you why getting family planning right is so incredibly important. Not just for one person, but for entire families and communities.
So this is the core challenge, right? What our sources call the 36-year question. How do you successfully manage nearly 4 decades of your reproductive life? Answering that question means you need clear information and you need a world of options.
And you know, the stakes here are really high. When people can actually plan their families on their own terms, the positive ripple effects are just huge. We're talking healthier mothers, healthier babies, more economic stability for couples. The benefits really do touch every single part of society.
Okay, so how do we tackle that 36-year question? Well, the great news is there isn't just one way to do it. There's a whole world of options out there, and our goal is to figure out how to find the right fit.
So broadly speaking, contraception falls into these 5 main buckets. Now, things like barrier methods and sterilization are definitely important options, but for this explainer, we're going to zero in on the 2 you hear about most: hormonal methods and these things called long-acting reversible contraceptives, or LARCs. We'll start with the one everyone thinks of first, the pill.
This category is pretty incredible. It's all about, well, hacking your body's own hormonal system. It's a fascinating piece of bioengineering that millions of people rely on every single day. But how in the world does it actually work?
I love this quote from our research. Deception is the mechanism. It's just such a powerful and honestly a really accurate way to put it. Hormonal contraceptives basically work by tricking the body into believing a completely different biological story is happening.
And you can really see that deception in action right here. On the left, a normal cycle has these peaks and valleys of hormones that tell the body, hey, release an egg. But look at the right. The pill flattens those curves completely. It creates this steady, consistent stream of hormones, which sends a totally different signal to your brain.
So here's how that amazing deception plays out, step by step. First, the pill introduces those steady, high levels of key hormones. Then, your brain's control center, the hypothalamus, it reads these levels and basically thinks, this looks a lot like pregnancy. And because it believes the body is already pregnant, it shuts down the signals that would normally trigger ovulation. No egg, no chance of pregnancy. It's a pretty elegant trick.
But understanding the biology is only half the story. The other, absolutely crucial piece is effectiveness. And this is where we need to talk about the huge difference between perfect use in a lab and how things play out in the messy, real world.
This chart tells such a critical story. With perfect use, I mean taking it at the exact same time every single day, no mistakes, the pill is over 99% effective. It's nearly foolproof. But typical use? That's real life. That's forgetting a pill, that's travel messing up your schedule, that's simple human error. And with typical use, the effectiveness drops to about 91%. That 8% gap, that's not just a number. It's where millions of unintended pregnancies happen every year.
So the key takeaway here is that for methods like the pill, adherence is literally everything. Forgetting just one pill, taking it at the wrong time, even getting sick to your stomach, all of it can compromise how well it works. It puts this constant, daily pressure on the user to be absolutely perfect. Of course, effectiveness is only one part of the decision. As you can see here, it's always a balance of benefits versus risks. On the plus side, lots of people get lighter, more regular periods, it can help control acne, and there's even a reduced risk of some cancers. But on the risk side, there is a small but serious increased risk of VTE. That's a fancy term for dangerous blood clots, as well as stroke, especially for women over 35 who smoke. It's a very personal calculation. That real-world effectiveness gap is a huge challenge. So, what about methods that are specifically designed to close that gap, or even get rid of it completely? This takes us beyond the daily pill.
And this is where LARCs enter the picture. Long-acting reversible contraceptives, like IUDs and implants, are often recommended by doctors as a first-line option for one big reason. They basically eliminate that human error gap. Their typical use effectiveness is pretty much identical to their perfect use effectiveness. It's a set-it-and-forget-it kind of approach.
Now, within the LARC family, the two main types of IUDs work in totally different ways. The copper IUD is completely hormone-free. It uses tiny copper ions to stop sperm in their tracks. And get this, it can work for up to 10 years. Then there's the hormonal IUD, which uses a small, localized dose of a hormone to thicken cervical mucus. And that one lasts for 3 to 5 years. Two really different paths to the same destination. Super effective, long-term contraception without the daily hassle.
Okay, throughout this entire discussion, you might have noticed something. The burden of contraception, historically and today, has fallen almost entirely on women. So you have to wonder, what about the other half of the population? What is the deal with the male pill?
Well, while the research has definitely lagged way behind female options, there is progress. A pill recently passed early trials by lowering sperm production, but side effects are still a really big hurdle to overcome. But maybe the most interesting development is a contraceptive body gel for men, which is actually moving into larger trials right now. So the idea of truly shared responsibility could be getting closer to reality.
So we come all the way back to that 36-year question. And as we've seen, there's just no single, easy right answer. Choosing a method is a dynamic, personal calculation of risks, benefits, and what's realistic for your life. There is no single best method, only what's best for you at this moment in your life. The whole point of this explainer wasn't to give you an answer, but to empower you to ask the right questions. So, what does the right choice really mean for you? Thanks for watching.